The way you see yourself is the way love shows up in your life. If you believe love isn't meant for you anymore, your experiences start proving that right. If you believe you're not someone people will choose, your mind will find evidence of that everywhere you look. Not because your diagnosis controls your life, but because the story you start telling yourself after you receive it starts dictating everything you do. How you engage with people, how you read every situation, and what you expect before anything even has a chance to get started. And look, it's true that not everyone is going to want to be in a relationship with someone who has herpes. That's real, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But if you believe that no one will, you stop living like love is even possible for you. And that belief starts creating a reality in every area of your life. So today, I'm going to walk you through how limiting beliefs about love form after a diagnosis, how they shape what you experience, and toward the end, I'll share 3 things you can start doing to shift your mindset and start creating the love life you actually want. Hi, I'm Dupree, and I help people to navigate life with herpes. Today, we're talking about the beliefs that shape your love life after a diagnosis, because most people know the fear is there. But what they don't always see is that underneath all that fear, their beliefs form about who gets to love them and what kind of relationship they're allowed to have now. And those beliefs, if you don't address them, start making choices for you. When I was first diagnosed, I wasn't worried about my health. That was like literally the furthest thing from my mind because I knew that herpes was very rarely life-threatening. But what I was worried about was my future. I genuinely believed that the kind of relationship I had always wanted was no longer available to me. And for a long time, I made choices that reflected that belief. I settled, I chose bad partners, and I stayed in situations that weren't right for me. I literally talked myself out of wanting more because I told myself that wanting more just wasn't realistic anymore. And over time, I found out that I was totally wrong. Here's how it all starts. When you get the news, you're in shock, you're scared, and your mind is trying to make sense of it all. It starts asking questions it doesn't even have answers to yet. Like, who's going to want me now, right? What happens when I have to tell somebody? Is anyone ever going to see past my condition? And because those questions are coming straight from fear, the answers in your mind come up with things that aren't exactly full of hope. They may sound something like, no one's going to want me. I'll never be intimate again. My only option now is to be with someone who has herpes too. Now, here's what I want you to understand. Those aren't facts. They're conclusions your scared mind created during one of the hardest moments of your life. The more you repeat them, the more familiar they feel. The more familiar they feel, the more your brain starts treating them like truth. And once you hold on to those repeated beliefs long enough, instead of them just living in your head, they start creating your life outside of it, in how much you're willing to let someone in whether you put yourself out there anymore, and whether you meet someone filled with excitement or already convinced that things are going to fall apart before anything has a chance to start. Because here's the thing. When you believe something long enough, it just doesn't affect how you feel. It drives every choice you make, and your choices create what your life actually looks like. When you hold on to the belief that your diagnosis has made you less desirable, you stop engaging with people you normally would. You close yourself off. You second guess everything. And you walk into situations already believing that things won't work out. And then when it doesn't, that confirms that belief. And the cycle keeps going and going. I know this all too well. Because after my diagnosis, there came a time where I stopped putting myself out there. I told myself that I was never going to find anyone who would accept my condition. So I gave up entirely, decided that I was going to be single for the rest of my life, and that I needed to just accept it. What I couldn't see from inside that mindset was that I had handed over all of my power to my diagnosis. I let it decide what was possible for me, what I deserved, and the conclusion I kept coming back to was, I'm not someone people would want to choose. But what changed everything for me was realizing it wasn't my diagnosis keeping me from love. It was the story I had been telling myself about what having herpes meant. And if I wanted to find love, I had to change the way I felt not only about my diagnosis, but about myself too. Now look, this realization didn't just come out of anywhere. I spent years doing the inner work to get to where I am now. The stigma herpes has makes us feel so bad about ourselves and carries so much shame as if we did something wrong. That, along with the roller coaster of emotions that comes with it, can have you feeling so damn low about yourself and your life. So I started reading books by authors like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Eckhart Tolle, Brené Brown, and others. And each taught me something different about changing your mindset, creating your reality, and having the courage to live life authentically so that I could share my story. I watched videos to help me do the inner work to heal, just like you're doing right now. And from everything I read and heard, there was one thing they all had in common, and that was what you believe about yourself determines everything you experience, and that it was up to me to choose differently. That I could either allow herpes to control my life, or that I could choose to live my life in spite of it. One of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou is, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." You can't control the fact that you have herpes, but you do get to decide how much power it has over you, how you see yourself, and what you believe is possible for your life moving forward. Now, even when someone starts working on changing their beliefs, their emotional state doesn't always match it. You become careful and guarded, and you're always on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop. And maybe you think that other people don't notice, but they do, because they can feel it in your energy and how you come across. But here's what's really important for you to know. Your emotional state isn't just something you work on mentally. It's about feeling that what you want is possible, living in that feeling, and becoming the person who believes the future they imagined is still available to them, no matter what the stigma tells them and what their current reality looks like. Look, you don't get what you want by closing yourself off. You get what you want by opening up and being vulnerable, regardless of what someone may think. People aren't drawn to you because of what you say. They're drawn to you because of how it feels to be around you. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard of Brené Brown. I mentioned her before. And if you haven't, she's a research professor who's spent over 2 decades studying vulnerability, courage, and human connection. Her TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, is one of the most watched TED Talks in the world, and I highly suggest you check it out. I'll even put the link in the description. And in her book, Daring Greatly, she says vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. Now, I know how terrifying being vulnerable can be. Before my boyfriend and I started dating, I was scared to death to tell him about my condition. I even thought about not telling him at all. And there were moments where I almost pushed him away just to avoid having that conversation. But I'm so glad that I didn't, because that one act of vulnerability changed my life. And I'm now in a relationship that I pictured and believed I could have. So, before we get into the 3 things you can start doing to create a different reality for your life, I want you to remember this. The thing that you're most afraid to do could be the one thing that leads you to the life that you want. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Notice what you're telling yourself. Most people have an entire scenario figured out in their mind before they even give someone a chance. And for people with herpes, it almost always ends badly. They rehearse the conversation going wrong. They picture the other person pulling away the moment they find out. And because they're so convinced it's going to go wrong, they never even try. And the reason why they never try is because they're terrified of being rejected. Not just because of their diagnosis, but because rejection feels like confirmation of everything they've been telling themselves, that they're no longer good enough and that they're not someone people will choose to be in a relationship with. And that fear of rejection becomes the very thing that keeps love from ever getting started. So I want you to start paying attention to the thoughts that keep going through your mind about love and dating. And if a negative thought pops up, don't judge yourself for it. Just notice it. Then ask yourself this one question. Is this thought creating the love life I want, or is it creating resistance against it? If it's creating resistance, I want you to stop, take a deep breath, and then I want you to change that thought. For example, instead of thinking to yourself, there's no way this is going to go well, change it to, I don't know how things are going to go, but no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. That one change stops the negative thought before it ever takes over. And when you switch your negative belief into a positive one, you begin to act from a place of courage instead of a place of fear. Number 2, get clear on what you actually want. Most people with herpes stop dreaming about what they want in love and they start focusing on what they think they can get. And that's a huge difference between the two. So here's something that I want you to do that may feel a little strange at first. I want you to forget about your current reality for a minute. Forget about what you think is possible given where you are right now. And instead, I want you to get really honest about what you actually want. Not what feels safe to want or what you think you can have now. What you really want if you didn't have herpes. Now, grab a journal or a piece of paper and create 2 columns. At the top of the left column, write what I don't want in a relationship. This column should be things that are deal breakers for you. At the top of the right column, write what I do want in a relationship. Now, the goal for this column isn't to write down surface level traits, such as what you want someone to look like. This is intended for you to be honest with yourself in how you want to feel and what you want to experience in a relationship. I wrote down things like, I want to feel accepted for who I am. I want to feel safe being vulnerable and honest. I want both physical and emotional intimacy. I want to feel respected and at ease. And I want someone who shows up and is consistent. And you know what this exercise did for me? It stopped me from settling. Once I knew exactly what I was looking for, I stopped putting up with people that not only couldn't give me what I wanted, but also couldn't give me what I knew I deserved. I stopped talking myself into relationships that I knew weren't right for me. And I stopped lowering my standards because I was no longer afraid nothing better would come along. Because the truth is, when you don't know what you want, or you believe you can't have it, you'll accept anything. Look, The world isn't scarce of people, and regardless of what you believe about your condition, you still have choices. So write down what you want and don't compromise. Number 3, practice feeling that relationship before it even arrives. I'm going to share something with you. And many people who have been listening to this podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about this in other episodes. Before I met my boyfriend, I did this thing every night where I turn off the light, I'd get all settled into bed, and then I turn my head toward the empty space beside me, and I quietly say out loud, I know you're out there. I can't wait to meet you. I'll see you soon. I love you. Then I would turn my head back and I'd close my eyes. And before falling asleep, I picture what it would feel like to be in that loving relationship with a person I hadn't even met yet. I truly believed that what I was picturing and feeling was going to happen. I mean, I didn't even question it. I did this for close to a year. And you know what happened? I met the person who would become the love of my life at a meditation group. Now, I didn't know it at the time that he was my person when we started talking, but he asked me out for coffee. And I have to admit, I almost didn't take him up on it because the moment he asked me, my mind went straight back to every negative belief I had about myself and my condition. But then something inside of me said, go. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And that one cup of coffee changed my life. And what's crazy is that everything I wrote down in my want column long before we met, I got. And I mean everything. Now, some people call this manifestation, but manifestation only works when you genuinely believe that what you want is possible for you. It's about living in the feeling that what you want is already on its way, regardless of your current reality and your diagnosis. And I got to the point where I realized that the only thing that was standing between me and the love life that I wanted had nothing to do with herpes and had everything to do with my beliefs, my emotional state, and what I believed I deserved. So before you fall asleep tonight, go ahead and try it. What have you got to lose? Don't think about who that person is or what they look like. Don't think about how it will happen or when. Just imagine what it feels like to be with the love of your life. Feel like it's already true. Because it's in that belief that opportunities start showing up. And that belief is also what gives you the courage to say yes when they do. Because that's what happens when you stop letting your diagnosis decide what's possible for you and you start creating the love life you want. Well, that's it for today, and I do want to end with this. There's one thing that I know for sure, and that's you can't heal in isolation, and this is why Herpes Wellness was created. It's a private community where you can get support from people who actually get it, who don't judge it, and who can help you to navigate your condition so that you could start living the life you want. So come check us out at Herpes Wellness. The link is in the description. Also, if you want support on the go, then you can download the Herpes Wellness app for free in both the App Store and in Google Play. And if privacy is a concern, the app icon and push notifications say H Wellness. So if someone happens to see your screen, you won't disclose your status unintentionally. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on audio, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Also, be sure to give us a like and a hype as this helps other people find the podcast. And if you like what you're hearing, or if there's something specific you would like for me to talk about, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you the next time on the Herpes Wellness Podcast. Bye for now.